We've already discussed how safeguarding is an umbrella term used to describe looking after children, but keeping them safe from harm, be it if they're going out on an outing, any activities they're doing. But also when you look at child protection, is actually specifically looking at your role and your responsibility in protecting children from harm and abuse from other people, so not from a danger or a hazard that might occur. When a child has been harmed, a number of organisations will become involved, each with different roles and responsibilities. Possibly the first port of call would be the GP or the hospital. GPs are usually the first port of call for patients, and as such they're often the first to pick up possible abuse when examining a child or young person at their surgery. In emergency situations, children and young people may be taken or may go to the accident and emergency unit at a local hospital, ours being the Conquest, if you live in Hastings, or the DGH if you're in Eastbourne. Hospitals keep a record of patients' visits, and if a child or young person is seen repeatedly with certain sorts of injuries, staff may identify possible abuse. Social services have a statutory duty to support vulnerable families. They must also respond appropriately to referrals regarding concerns that a child or young person is suffering or likely to suffer significant harm, and they must work within the legal framework and local procedures to safeguard children and young people. Social workers must work sensitively with parents while simultaneously ensuring that the children are protected. Health visitors may also be involved, and they have responsibilities relating to the health and development of children under the age of 5. They also provide guidance and support to their families. This means the parents who are not coping may turn to them for help. Health visitors go into the family home, so they are well placed to notice environmental causes for concern, such as if a child is being neglected or is otherwise living in unacceptable circumstances. The police may also become involved, and the harm or abuse of children or young people may lead to criminal proceedings which the police will have responsibility for. It's not uncommon for police officers to identify possible abuse when called to attend a domestic disturbance, for example. They may also be involved with social workers should a child or young person be removed from the family home as a safeguarding measure. Along with police, also probation services may be involved when someone is found guilty of harming or abusing a child or young person. Probation officers have a number of duties, including making assessments to advise courts, managing and enforcing community orders, and working with prisoners during and after sentencing. In an effort to rehabilitate offenders, they also have a duty to enforce the conditions of court orders and release licences. In an effort to protect the public, they conduct offender risk assessments and ensure that offenders are aware of the impact of their crime on their victims and the public. The NSPCC, although it's a charitable organisation, it provides advice services for adults worried that a child or young person may be being harmed. Parents, professionals and members of the general public can call to help protect children. They also provide a free online specialised child protection resource for practitioners like you, researchers, trainers like me, policymakers and other professionals working to protect children. They provide direct services to children and families, concentrating on important issues and groups of children most at risk. The NSPCC also support Childline, where trained volunteers are on hand to provide advice and support 24 hours a day to children. They make contact either by phone or online. See if you can find out what the Childline phone number is and bring it into college next time you're in. There's also a primary school service being developed, and it aims to teach children aged 5 to 11 in every community, 1, what abuse and bullying are, 2, how to protect themselves, and 3, where to get help if they need it. Also, there was an advert on the radio a couple of days ago, and it's actually looking at educating children as to where their private bits are that they don't want anybody else to touch. And if somebody touches in the pants area, they're to inform their parents or a teacher. So see if you can find out a little bit more about that as well for your portfolios. The last organisation that quite possibly would be involved are psychology services. Child psychologists support children and young people who have been harmed or abused. Clinical or forensic psychologists are often asked to contribute to child risk assessments, which assess the level of risk that a parent may pose to a child or young person. This must be carefully considered when decisions are to be made about where a child or young person will live and under what circumstances they will be able to see a parent who has caused harm or abuse. If you're also involved in a situation where a child has told you something, you would also, as a practitioner, not necessarily need psychological help, but possibly somebody to talk to so you can work through the feelings that you'll be going through. At the beginning, it probably won't hit you, but then suddenly you'll be wondering sort of how to deal with these feelings, and you will need support as well. As you know already, as practitioners, you have a duty of care towards the children that you are caring for. You are actually taking the place of their parents for that time that they are with you. For a parent, having a baby, having a child is the most amazing thing to happen in their lives, and that child is the centre of their world. It is their everything, their reason for being. That's why your duty of care and caring for children should be at the heart of your own professional values. As you're well aware, there are lots of policies and procedures in place to protect children, young people and adults. Remember, you need to be protected too, not just the children in your care. What we're going to look at now is whistleblowing. Now, it's a term that some of you might have heard of, some of you haven't possibly, and it's used to describe when a practitioner alerts superiors or outside professionals to their concerns relating to their own setting. All those within the sector have a duty to safeguard children, and as such they must take action to blow the whistle if necessary, even though it may be uncomfortable. You must report concerns about colleagues to superiors if you suspect them of abuse, causing harm or poor practice. If you have reported to superiors your concerns, but feel they've not acted appropriately by taking your concerns seriously or by taking action, you must report this. If the concern relates to abuse or harm, you should call social services without delay. Even if you're not entirely sure that something is going on, because of this duty of care, because you're there to protect children, you're obligated to say something. Now, I don't know how many of you know that in 2009 there was a case involving a nursery worker in Plymouth called Vanessa George. She sexually abused toddlers in her care within the workplace. She took over 100 photos of her victims, which she shared with other paedophiles via the internet. And it just serves as a reminder that we must act if we're concerned about a colleague's practice. She had had her CRB check done, she was trained, she was qualified, she even had her own children, but still went on to abuse other children in her care. We're going to look now at safe working practices. The term safe working practices refer to the way practitioners, yourselves, work to protect children and to protect themselves from allegations of abuse. Your organisation's guidelines will be included within the child protection policy and are based on the requirements of your home country, being England. You must make sure that you know and understand these and always work in accordance with them. Remember that every single setting is different. Although everybody has to have a child protection procedure, everyone's will vary slightly depending on where they are and who you would go to. It is the role of the person in charge of the setting to check that the safe practices are adhered to and to monitor their effectiveness. Regulative bodies, which are Ofsted in our case, will also want to be satisfied that these practices are observed. Practitioners need to be open and accepting about being accountable to children, parents, families and other agencies. It's part of holding a position of power and trust. This course, when you've finished 1 year of this course, it actually gives you licence to practice, which qualifies you to work unsupervised as an early years practitioner. That is a huge responsibility, so you must ensure that you are working to these safe practices to protect you as well as the children. Some of the following safe working practices, this is really just guidance, but it gives you an idea of typically some of the things that are included within safe working practice guidance. So all adults must have a DBS check if they are going to be working with children, but it also means that even if you are volunteering as a student, as a worker, you must have this DBS check and it must come back clear. Also, at least 2 adults must always be present at the setting, however many children there are. This applies even if there is 1 child left who is late being collected. At least 2 staff members should stay. After an hour or so has elapsed, sometimes the duty social worker might be called, but again, it really depends on your setting and what their policies and procedures are for non-collection of children. This is something that you need to find out. Another guideline, adults must follow guidance on physical contact with children and young people. Babies and young children need close physical contact to feel cared for, safe and secure. But as children mature, less physical contact is needed and working practice needs to be adjusted accordingly. Adults must know what is acceptable contact and what isn't. For example, if a 2-year-old child wants to sit on your lap while you're reading a story, that isn't an issue. Once they get to senior and they're sort of 12 and 13, sitting on your lap to listen to a story really isn't appropriate. So it's making adjustments like that. Also, adults shouldn't invite children into their homes, or in the case of childminders, if they do out of normal hours, it should be arranged with parents or carers. Adults shouldn't be offering children lifts in their car or taking them anywhere if they should accidentally meet them outside of the setting. And again, this speaks for itself. A child might say that something happened, but it didn't. But because there's only you and that child, it's going to be really difficult. There are guidelines in place about what should happen if an allegation of abuse is made about a member of staff. And again, you should know what this policy is in your own setting. Also, to safeguard children, adults must ensure that off-site visits are carefully planned in terms of risk assessment and supervision, including any journeys. Now, we looked at things like risk assessments in CYP3.3. So if you need to go back and look at anything there, then that's where you would start. Adults also must ensure that written permission has been obtained before children and young people are photographed, videoed or recorded. This is especially pertinent for those of you in settings that want to take pictures of the children, especially when you're doing your observations or you want to record activities that you've done. You must get permission from the parents from the setting before you take any photos, just to be on the safe side. Now, what I've discussed on here, the duty of care, the whistleblowing, safe working practices, this all works towards your learning outcome 3 in your LAO for CYP 3.3. So as you listen to this, I hope you've taken notes. If you get bored of me droning on, you can pause me, you can go back, you can take more notes. But it also means that if there are any bits that you're not clear about, you can make a note of it, and when you come back into class, we can actually discuss it as a group. Thank you for listening, and thank you. I've got to try this again. Where is it? Thank you for listening to my lightsaber, because actually I think that's pretty awesome, as are all of you. See you in class.